Hi, this is Steph from everythingvintagesteph.com. That's where you can find my eBay store, Everything Vintage Steph, spelled with a PH at the end. And I also have a blog at Everything Vintage Steph, spelled with two F's at the end, everythingvintagesteph.com. And this is my vintage video, number 7, where I'm going to concentrate on vintage fabrics and vintage quilts, things that are made out of vintage fabrics. But I usually show you part of my eBay basement. And this is a really small part right here, right at the bottom of the steps. But what I have here basically is all my fabrics. Some of it's vintage, some of it's not. And I do have some sheets over here and a lot of kids sheets, character sheets. I could talk about those too because some of those are vintage. Character sheets are really good to find. And they sell very well on eBay. A lot of this stuff is new, but it's still good to find and sell on eBay. But I think I want to start here with the vintage quilts then. They're all made out of vintage fabric, and any fabric that is made before the 1970s, when polyester was invented, is probably cotton. Cotton or nylon, but most of your quilts will be made out of cotton. This particular quilt is, of course, all cotton in different colors, and that's the Sunbonnet Sue pattern, very popular. And there are things on here that make the embroidery stand out, so it's just not a regular quilt, but it's embroidered and appliqued. Just looking at some of the fabrics on the other quilts, this one has a lot of that velvety fabric, and that was very popular in the 1940s, so I'm guessing that this quilt is probably from the 1940s. It's the log cabin pattern. I don't want to open the entire thing, but there you can see one of the panels. Some of it's shiny. That might be some nylon in there, but it has the velvety fabric and the cotton fabric. And this is called the backing, and that is a nice cotton fabric. Another quilt that I have for sale on eBay. All of these items here are for sale on eBay. Sometimes you find quilts in not so great condition, but people often buy them to take them apart and use them in other projects. Like you can make pillows out of this. But you can see some of the really nice vintage fabrics that are in here. The small flowers are an indication that it's vintage, and that was popular in the 1940s into the 1950s, and maybe even earlier, some in the 1930s. You can see the small design on the backing there. This is probably more from the 1960s. It's a raised pattern fabric, but it's still all cotton with an embroidered design on it. Probably made more like a tapestry would be. And the one on the bottom here is a crazy quilt. Not in as great a condition, and this is a knotted quilt that has, it's tied instead of quilted in the seams like many of them are. But you can see all the different fabrics on here, the different more dull brownish colors. This is the fan pattern, done in pinks and blues, so that makes it nice and a little bit more vibrant. This one's in very good condition. And we might as well look at this one that's right here. This is probably from the 60s or 70s. It's an all cotton bedspread, and the ruffle would go around all the different sides of the bed. I have those listed on eBay, and I took the pictures on one of my vintage beds so that you can see it better. Chenille. Chenille is very popular right now, and I'm just going to hold up another chenille blanket that's over here because this is a crib blanket, and maybe get a little closer to it because it's really cute. If we can just look at the middle of that one. The chenille it's all cotton chenille. You do find some polyester blends or cotton blends with chenille, but this is an older one, so it's all cotton. And it's like a raised design on the blanket itself. Now to get to just some of the fabrics, one thing I don't have up there, because as soon as I ever get anything with bark cloth, it usually sells right away. So the only thing I have right now is a pillow, because this one is not for sale on eBay. It's on my sofa. But if you get close, you can see that there's a lot of texture to it. And that's how you can tell that it's bark cloth. And it's usually in a floral design, or the tropical designs are very, very popular. So that's an example of bark cloth. This is possibly an example of feed sack or feed bag material. If not, it's very close to it. It also has texture, but it's cotton. Like it's something that another material might have come in it, and then you could save the fabric and make it into whatever you wanted to. The real feed sack will have little holes along the side to show where it used to be seamed together. So that's why I don't think this is really a feed sack, but it feels and looks like it. It just has that same texture, and that is a vintage fabric there. This one's vintage, mostly due to the design. And you can also tell if something is vintage because of the width of the fabric. Most of your fabrics today are 45 wide or wider, say 56 or 60. But if it's only 36 wide, it's most likely vintage. That's a cute design. Not vintage because you can tell it's a nice sports item. I have some from probably the 60s or 70s when this kind of geometric pattern was more popular. That's a really thick piece of fabric. Not sure how many yards are in there, but that's one of the pieces from the 60s with the bold geometric pattern. There's another one, and sometimes you'll find a good brand name on there like Waverly. This is definitely from the 70s. It's polyester, so this is not cotton anymore. But I would say vintage 70s. Another one similar to that could be this design, and that's in polyester. So that's just a little bit of the vintage fabrics that I have that are available on eBay, or you can just look for anything under vintage fabric. We can find 1 yard, 2 yards, 10 yards, but you can get a lot of different designs. And I hope this was a little bit helpful to you. You can subscribe to my vintage video series and like me. Thank you.